between the known, the unknown, and the unreal. That's where you'll find the Tomb of the Mysteries. With your host, Jack Elder. Mysteries is dedicated to the finest in classic weird fiction and supernatural horror. Welcome, everyone. Here at the Tomb of the Mysteries, we've been doing a little bit of spring cleaning, just in time for your arrival. Here's a thought. Remember the last time you mentioned the word immortality in polite conversation? Do you remember the reaction of the person listening to you? Think about it. Immortality. Usually when you think about living forever, the first thing that comes to mind is maybe Count Dracula. Maybe a character out of an Anne Rice novel. But what about the actual building blocks of immortality? What do they look like? You know, I found something here in the files we keep here in the tomb. I think you might be interested in hearing this. It comes from up north. Somewhere just west of Arkham, Massachusetts. Little town called Partridgeville. Ever hear of it? I didn't think so. I have a report from chemist and bacteriologist James Morden. Listen to this. It says, "The fluid sent to me for analysis is the most peculiar that I've ever examined. It resembles living protoplasm, but it lacks a fundamental substance known as enzymes. Enzymes catalyze the chemical reactions occurring in living cells, and when a cell dies, they cause it to disintegrate. Without enzymes, protoplasm would possess enduring vitality. Immortality. Biologists emphatically deny that living matter can exist without enzymes, but the substance that you've sent me is alive. Good God, sir, do you realize what astounding new vistas this opens up?" Well, if you want to find out exactly where that substance came from, or rather when it came from, then I've got just the story for you. It's from 1929 by author Frank Belknap Long. It's called The Hounds of Tindalos.
At 2 o'clock this morning, an earth tremor of unusual severity broke several plate glass windows in Central Square and completely disorganized the electric and street railway systems. The tremor was felt in the outlying districts, and the steeple of First Baptist Church on Angel Hill was entirely demolished. Firemen are now attempting to put out a blaze which threatens to destroy the Partridgeville glue works. An investigation is promised by the mayor, and an immediate attempt will be made to fix responsibility for this disastrous occurrence.
Frank!
Chalmers, my old friend.
I'm glad you came.
It had been a while since I'd seen my friend Halpin Chalmers. He was sitting by the window and his face was very pale. 2 tall candles guttered at his elbow and cast a sickly amber light over his long nose and slightly receding chin. Chalmers would have nothing modern about his apartment. He had the soul of a medieval ascetic, and he preferred illuminated manuscripts to automobiles and leering stone gargoyles to radios and adding machines. As I crossed the room to the settee he had cleared for me, I glanced at his desk and was surprised to discover that he had been studying the mathematical formulae of a celebrated contemporary physicist, and that he had covered many sheets of thin yellow paper with curious geometric designs.
The chairs, table, and desk were littered with pamphlets about medieval sorcery, witchcraft, and black magic, and all of the valiant, glamorous things that the modern world has repudiated. Chalmers smiled engagingly and passed me a Russian cigarette on a curiously carved tray. Einstein and John Dee are strange bedfellows. In fact, I can't help noticing the bizarre recent additions to your library. Let's see. Plotinus, Emmanuel Moscopolis, St. Thomas Aquinas, and Frenicle de Bessy standing elbow to elbow in the bookcase.
We're just discovering now that the old alchemists and sorcerers were 2/3 right, and that your modern biologist and materialist is 9/10 wrong.
You've always scoffed at modern science.
Only at scientific dogmatism. I've always been a rebel, a champion of originality and lost causes. That is why I've chosen to repudiate the conclusions of contemporary biologists.
And Einstein?
A priest of transcendental mathematics. A profound mystic and explorer of the great suspected.
Then you do not entirely despise science.
Of course not. I merely distrust the scientific positivism of the last 50 years. The positivism of Haeckel and Darwin, and of Mr. Bertrand Russell. I believe that biology has failed pitifully to explain the mystery of man's origin and destiny.
Give them time.
Give them time. My friend, your pun is sublime. That is precisely what I would do. But your modern biologist scoffs at time. He has the key, but he refuses to use it. What do we know of time, really? Einstein believes that it is relative, that it can be interpreted in terms of space, of curved space. But must we stop there? When mathematics fails us, can we not advance by insight?
You're treading on dangerous ground. That is a pitfall that your true investigator avoids. That's why modern science has advanced so slowly. It accepts nothing that it cannot demonstrate. But you...
I would take hashish, opium, all manner of drugs. I would emulate the sages of the East, and then perhaps I would apprehend...
What?
The fourth dimension.
Theosophical rubbish.
Perhaps. But I believe that drugs expand human consciousness. William James agreed with me. And I've discovered a new one.
A new drug?
It was used centuries ago by the Chinese alchemists, but it's virtually unknown in the West. Its occult properties are amazing. With its aid and the aid of my mathematical knowledge, I believe that I can go back through time.
What are you talking about?
Time is merely our imperfect perception of a new dimension of space. Time and motion are both illusions. Everything that has existed from the beginning of the world exists now. Events that occurred centuries ago on this planet continue to exist in another dimension of space. Events that will occur centuries from now exist already. We cannot perceive their existence because we can't enter the dimension of space that contains them. Human beings as we know them are merely fractions, infinitesimally small fractions of one enormous whole. Every human being is linked with all the life that has preceded him on this planet. All of his ancestors are part of him. Only time separates him from his forebears, and time is an illusion and does not exist.
I'll take your word for it.
It will be sufficient for my purpose if you can form a vague idea of what I wish to achieve. I wish to strip from my eyes the veils of illusion that time has thrown over them, and see the beginning and the end.
And you think that this new drug's gonna help you?
I'm sure that it will. And I want you to help me. I intend to take the drug immediately. I cannot wait. I must see. I'm going back through time. I have here 5 pellets of the drug Liao. It was used by the Chinese philosopher Lao Tse, and while under its influence, he visioned the Tao.
The Tao?
Tao is the most mysterious force in the world. It surrounds and pervades all things. It contains the visible universe and everything that we call reality. He who apprehends the mysteries of the Tao sees clearly all that was and will be. The Tao resembles a great animal, recumbent, motionless, containing in its enormous body all the worlds of our universe, the past, the present, and the future. We see portions of this great monster through a slit which we call time. With the aid of this drug, I shall enlarge the slit. I shall behold the great figure of life, the great recumbent beast in its entirety.
And what do you want me to do?
Watch, my friend. Watch and take notes. And if I go back too far, you must recall me to reality by shaking me violently. If I appear to be suffering acute physical pain, you must recall me at once.
Chalmers, I wish you wouldn't make this experiment. You're taking dreadful risks. I don't believe that there's any fourth dimension, and I emphatically don't believe in the Tao. And I don't approve of you experimenting with unknown drugs.
I know the properties of this drug. I know precisely how it affects the human animal, and I know its dangers. The risk does not reside in the drug itself. My only fear is that I may become lost in time. You see, I shall assist the drug. Before I swallow this pellet, I shall give my undivided attention to the geometric and algebraic symbols that I have traced upon this paper. I shall prepare my mind for an excursion into time. Before I enter the dream world of the Eastern mystics, I shall acquire all of the mathematical help that modern science can offer. This conscious approach to the apprehension of the fourth dimension of time will open up stupendous new vistas. I have often grasped the fourth dimension in dreams, but I've never been able to recall in waking life the occult splendors that were revealed to me. But with your aid, Frank, I believe I can recall them. I want you to take down everything that I say under the influence of the drug. No matter how strange or incoherent my speech may become, you will omit nothing. When I awake, I may be able to supply the key to whatever is mysterious or bizarre. I may not succeed, but if I do, time will exist for me no longer. I shall make this experiment at once. Please stand over there by the window and watch. Have you a pen?
Yes, right here.
And a pad, Frank. Do you have a pad?
Yes, right here. But I emphatically disapprove of this experiment. You're taking a frightful risk.
Don't be an asinine old woman. Nothing that you can say will induce me to stop now. I entreat you to remain silently while I study these charts.
Chalmers raised the charts and studied them intently. I watched the clock on the mantel as it ticked out the seconds, and a curious dread clutched in my heart so that I choked. Suddenly, the clock stopped ticking, and exactly at that moment, Chalmers swallowed the drug. I rose quickly and moved toward him, but his eyes implored me not to interfere.
The clock has stopped. The forces that control it approve of my experiment. Time stopped, and I swallowed the drug. I pray God that I shall not lose my way.
He closed his eyes and leaned back on the chair. All of the blood had left his face and he was breathing heavily. It was clear that the drug was acting with extraordinary rapidity.
It's beginning to get dark. Write that. It is beginning to get dark and the familiar objects in the room are fading out. I can discern them vaguely through my eyelids, but they're fading swiftly. I am leaving the room. The walls are vanishing, and I can no longer see any of the familiar objects. Your face, Frank. Your face, though, is still visible to me. I hope that you're writing. I think that I'm about to make a great leap. A leap through space. Or perhaps it is through time I shall make that leap. I cannot tell. Everything is dark, indistinct.
He sat silently for a while with his head sunk upon his breast. Then, suddenly, He stiffened and his eyelids fluttered open.
God in heaven, I see.
He was straining forward in his chair, staring at the opposite wall, but I knew that he was looking beyond the wall and that the objects in the room no longer existed for him. Chalmers, shall I wake you?
Do not. I see everything. All of the billions of lives that preceded me on this planet are before me at this moment. I see men of all ages, all races, all colors. They're fighting, killing, building, dancing, and singing. They're sitting about rude fires on lonely gray deserts and flying through the air in monoplanes. They're riding the seas on bark canoes and enormous steamships. They are painting bison and mammoths on the walls of dismal caves. They're covering huge canvases with strange futuristic designs. I watch the migrations from Atlantis. I see the elder races. A strange horde of black dwarves are overwhelming Asia. And the Neanderthals with lowered heads and bent knees ranging obscenely across Europe. I watch the Achaeans streaming into the Greek islands and the crude beginnings of Hellenic culture. I am in Athens, and Pericles is young. I'm standing on the soil of Italy. I assist in the rape of the Sabines. I march with the Imperial legions. I tremble with awe and wonder at the enormous standards go by and the ground shakes with the tread of the victorious Hastati. 1,000 naked slaves grovel before me as I pass in a litter of gold and ivory drawn by night-black oxen from Thebes. And the flower girls are screaming, Ave Caesar, as I nod and smile. I am myself a slave on a Moorish galley. I watch the erection of a great cathedral. Stone by stone it arises, and through months and years I stand and watch each stone as it falls into place. I am burned on a cross head downward in the time-scented gardens of Nero. And I watch with amusement and scorn the torturers at work in the chambers of the Inquisition. I walk in the holiest of sanctuaries. I enter the temples of Venus. I kneel in adoration before the Magna Mater. I throw coins on the bare knees of the sacred courtesans who sit with veiled faces in the groves of Babylon. I creep into an Elizabethan theater and with the stinking rabble about me I applaud the Merchant of Venice. I walk with Dante through the narrow streets of Florence. I meet the young Beatrice, and the hem of her garment brushes my sandals as I stare enraptured. I am a priest of Isis, and my magic astounds the nations. Simon Magus kneels before me, imploring my assistance. And Pharaoh, he trembles when I approach. In India, I talk with the masters and run screaming from their presence. Their revelations are as salt on wounds that bleed. I perceive everything simultaneously. I perceive everything from all sides. I'm a part of the teeming billions about me. I exist in all men, and all men exist in me. I perceive the whole of human history in a single instant, the past and the present. By simply straining, I can see farther and farther back. Now I'm going back through strange curves, and angles. Angles and curves multiply about me. I perceive great segments of time through the curves. There's curved time and angular time. The beings that exist in angular time cannot enter curved time. It's very strange. I'm going back and back. Man has disappeared from the earth. Gigantic reptiles crouch beneath enormous palms and swim through loathly black waters of dismal lakes. Now the reptiles have disappeared. No animals remain upon the land. But beneath the waters, plainly visible to me, dark forms move slowly over rotting vegetation. These forms are becoming simpler and simpler. But now they're single cells. All about me there are angles. Strange angles that have no counterparts upon the earth. I'm desperately afraid. There is an abyss of being which man has never fathomed.
Chalmers had risen to his feet and he was gesticulating helplessly with his arms.
I'm passing through unearthly angles. I am approaching. Oh, the burning horror of it!
Chalmers, do you wish me to interfere?
Not yet. I will go on. I will see what lies beyond. Beyond life, there are things that I can't distinguish. They move slowly through angles. They have no bodies. Then they move slowly through outrageous angles.
It was then that I became aware of the odor in the room. It was a pungent, indescribable odor, so nauseous that I could barely endure it. I stepped quickly to the window and threw it open. And when I returned to Chalmers and looked into his eyes, I nearly fainted.
I think they've scented me. They're slowly turning toward me.
He was trembling horribly. For a moment he clawed at the air with his hands. Then his legs gave way beneath him and he fell forward on his face, slobbering and moaning. I watched him in silence as he dragged himself across the floor. He was no longer a man. His teeth were bared and saliva dripped from the corners of his mouth. Chalmers! Chalmers! Stop it! Stop it, do you hear? As if in reply to my appeal, he commenced to utter hoarse, convulsive sounds which resembled nothing so much as the barking of a dog, and began a sort of hideous writhing in a circle about the room. I bent and seized him by the shoulders. Violently, desperately, I shook him. He turned his head and snapped at my wrist. I was sick with horror, but I dared not release him for fear that he would destroy himself in a paroxysm of rage. Chalmers, you must stop that! There's nothing in this room that can harm you. Do you understand? I continued to shake and admonish him, and gradually the madness died out of his face. Shivering convulsively, he crumpled into a grotesque heap on the Chinese rug. I carried him to the sofa and deposited him upon it. His features were twisted in pain, and I knew that he was still struggling dumbly to escape from abominable memories.
Whiskey. You'll find a flask in the cabinet by the window. Upper left-hand drawer.
That drug was the very devil.
It wasn't the drug. They scented me in time. I went too far.
What do you mean? Who are they?
No words in our language can describe them. They're symbolized vaguely in the myth of the fall, in an obscene form which is occasionally found engraved on ancient tablets. The Greeks had a name for them, which veiled their essential foulness. The tree, the snake, the apple. These are vague symbols of a most awful mystery. Frank, a terrible and unspeakable deed was done in the beginning. Before time, the deed. And from the deed, the seeds of the deed move through angles in dim recesses of time. They're hungry and athirst.
Chalmers, pull yourself together, man.
They're lean and athirst! The Hounds of Tindalos!
That's it. I'm calling a physician.
A physician can't help me now! They're horrors of the soul! And yet... they're real, Frank! I saw them for a ghastly moment! For a moment I stood on the other side! I stood on the pale gray shores beyond time and space, in an awful light that wasn't light, in a silence that shrieked. I saw them! All the evil in the universe was concentrated in their lean, hungry bodies. Or had they bodies? I only saw them for a moment. I can't be certain. But I heard them breathe. Indescribably for a moment, I felt their breath upon my face. They turned toward me, and I fled screaming. In a single moment, I fled screaming through time. I fled down quintillions of years. But they scented me. Men awakened them cosmic hungers. We've escaped momentarily from the foulness that rings them round. They thirst for that in us which is clean, which emerged from the deed without stain. There's a part of us which did not partake in the deed, and that they hate. But don't imagine that they are literally prosaically evil. They're beyond good and evil as we know it. They are that which in the beginning fell away from cleanliness. Through the deed, they became bodies of death, receptacles of all foulness. But they are not evil in our sense, because in the spheres through which they move, there's no thought, no morals, no right or wrong as we understand it. There is merely the pure and the foul. The foul expresses it through angles, the pure through curves. Man, the pure part of him is descended from a curve. Don't laugh, I mean that literally.
I'm dreadfully sorry for you, Chalmers, but I don't intend to stay and listen to such gibberish. I'll send my physician to see you. He's a kindly old chap, and he won't be offended if you tell him to go to the devil. I hope you'll take his advice. Maybe a week's rest in a good sanitarium should benefit you immeasurably. I heard him laughing as I descended the stairs, but his laughter was so utterly mirthless that it moved me to tears. Frank here.
Thank God you're home, Frank. There's no time to explain. With double haste, you've got to get to the hardware store and get some supplies for us before it's too late. Frank, listen carefully and write this down. We need 20 pounds of plaster of Paris, a new mixing pail, 2 spades...
Seriously, Chalmers, what are you on about? Get a hold of
No
you.
time! Just get the supplies and get here as soon as you can. Hurry, Frank!
When I arrived, Chalmers seized the parcel of supplies with a quickness that startled me.
It is just conceivable that we can thwart them. But we must work rapidly. Frank, there's a stepladder in the hall. Bring it here immediately, and then fetch a pail of water.
What for?
To mix the plaster, you fool! To mix the plaster that will save our bodies and souls from a contamination unmentionable! To mix the plaster that will save the world from... Frank! They must be kept out!
Who?
The Hounds of Tindalos! They can only reach us through angles. We must eliminate all angles from the room. We'll plaster up all of the corners, all of the crevices. We must make this room resemble the interior of a sphere.
I knew that it would have been useless to argue with him. I fetched the stepladder, Chalmers mixed the plaster, and for 3 hours we labored. We filled in the corners of the room and the intersections between the floor and the walls, and we rounded the sharp angles of the window seats.
There, that should do it, Frank. I shall remain in this room until they return in time. When they discover that the scent leads through curves, they will return. They will return ravenous and snarling, and unsatisfied to the foulness that was in the beginning, before time, beyond space. It was good of you to help.
Will you not see a physician?
Perhaps. Tomorrow. But now I must watch and wait.
Wait for what?
I know that you think me insane. You have a shrewd but prosaic mind, And you can't conceive of an entity that does not depend for its existence on force and matter. But did it ever occur to you, my friend, that force and matter are merely the barriers to perception imposed by time and space? When one knows, as I do, that time and space are identical, and that they are both deceptive because they are merely imperfect manifestations of a higher reality, one no longer seeks in the visible world for an explanation of the mystery and terror of being.
Chalmers, I've had enough. I'm leaving.
Forgive me. I didn't mean to offend you. You have a superlative intellect, but I have a superhuman one. It is only natural that I should be aware of your limitations.
I'll send my physician at once. Phone me if you need me. Dr. Westcott, I can't thank you enough for coming with me to Chalmers' place today. I've been really worried about his mental state, and his physical health has taken a turn for the worse from the strain of the last couple of days.
Think nothing of it, Frank. I'm always available to my old clients, though it's been a while since I've done a house call. Seems like I remember attending to Halpin's father during the Spanish flu epidemic. I pretty much saw everyone in these parts during the worst of it. So you say your fellow's worse for the wear?
Doc, I've never seen my friend this worked up before. It's not just his health that worries me. I can't shake this feeling that there's something really weird going on. Something I can't quite put into words. Anyway, I thought for sure I would have heard from him after the earthquake earlier this morning. I've got a really bad feeling about this.
Frank, do you smell that acrid odor? What in God's name is that?
Chalmers! Are you there? Chalmers! Chalmers! This isn't good, Doctor. I think we'd better break in. Chalmers! Good God, man!
Frank,
Chalmers!
we're too late. Your friend is dead. I'd better call the police at once. Where's the telephone?
There, in the corner on the floor.
Hello, police? Dr. William Muscott from Arkham General here. I was making a house call at 24th Central Square on the second floor above Isaac's jewelry store for Mr. Halpin Chalmers. Mr. Chalmers appears to have been the victim of some kind of fatal attack. He's stark naked, stretched upon his back in the corner of the room. He's been decapitated, and his head is sitting upon his chest. His body appears to be twisted and horribly mangled, but I don't see a trace of blood anywhere. I don't know how to explain this, but he's covered with a peculiar bluish pus. Possibly, the room is utterly devoid of furniture. Okay. Yes. No, I haven't. Yes. Yes, of course. His friend and I will be here when you arrive. Please hurry. Thank you. Did you know what he was up to? You should have called me earlier. Your friend seems to have been in the throes of some kind of psychotic episode. Frank, look. This blue slime appears to be oozing from his lacerations. Coming out of him like he's bleeding this monstrous fluid. What in the hell did your friend get himself into? And what's that on the walls?
Yesterday I helped him fill out all the angles with plaster of Paris. He wanted to turn the room into a sphere devoid of all sharp angles. I don't know exactly why, but he was very insistent upon it. The earthquake must have caused fragments to crack and fall off.
Someone has arranged those chunks around his body in a perfect triangle.
Wait, what is that near his torso? Notes. My God, he was taking notes. What is this? It reads, I am watching and waiting. I sit by the window and watch the walls and the ceiling.
I don't believe that they can reach me, but I must beware of the dolls. Perhaps it's they who can help them break through. The satyrs will help. and they can advance through the scarlet circles. The Greeks knew a way of preventing that. It's a great pity that we've forgotten so much. Good God, the plaster is falling! Is this an earthquake? A terrific shock has loosened the plaster and it's falling out of the corners. I never anticipated this. It's growing dark in the room. I must phone Frank. But can he get here in time? I'll have to try. I'll recite the Einstein formula. I will... God, they're breaking through! Smoke is pouring from the corners of the room! Their tongues!
As to the doctor's question of what my friend had been up to, I was in such a state of disbelief and shock I didn't know what to say. Like I could even begin to offer an explanation. Who would believe that a mere 36 hours ago, this had all started as a well-intentioned, if wayward attempt by my now very dead friend Halpin Chalmers to combine theoretical physics and magic here in his doomed apartment. The only thing I know for certain is that something unspeakably terrifying has occurred, and that I have an unnerving sense we haven't seen the last of this unbelievably horrible mystery.
Excerpt from The Secret Watcher by Halpin Chalmers.
What if, parallel to the life we know, there is another life that does not die, which lacks the elements that destroy our life? Perhaps in another dimension, there is a different force from that which generates our life. Perhaps this force emits energy, or something similar to energy, which passes from the unknown dimension where it is and creates a new form of cell life in our dimension. No one knows for certain that such cell life does in fact exist in our dimension. But I have seen its manifestations. I have talked with them. In my room at night, I have talked with the dolls. And in dreams, I have seen their maker. I have stood on the dim shore beyond time and matter and have seen it. It moves through strange curves and outrageous angles. Someday, I shall travel in time and meet it face to face.
Tune in next week when Tomb of the Mysteries presents Robert E. Howard's The Black Stone. Until then, don't forget to visit us on the web at www.tombofmysteries.com.